Welcome, everybody, to the Minnesota Sports Collaboration Podcast Show, where we highlight all of our Minnesota content creators, shows, and friends here on the program. Poppy, how's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to come together with all of our friends. You've heard them on our show, or if you're listening on their show, maybe you've heard us jump in with them. But every week, we're going to have little teasers and snippets from everybody's shows in one spot on all of our feeds so you can get a little taste. And hey, if you haven't listened to one, go check them out. Throw everyone a quick little subscribe, and let's make everyone happy. Now, Isha, what's the first one we have here for this week?
We're going to throw to LockedOn Wild. Our boy Seth Topol drops daily Minnesota Wild content with a wide range of guests. Here's a quick clip of some of his recent content.
I do want to talk a little bit between Bill Guerin and Chuck Fletcher. I do have to preface, though, that nothing that I say is like a huge dig at Chuck, but it is so nice to have a GM who has been so aggressive with what he's done since he started. But I think that aggressiveness stems from just having like a full-blown plan as to what Guerin wants this organization to look like top to bottom. And you know, I'm sure Fletcher had a vision that he wanted to see this Wild team get to. Obviously, being kind of a low-level playoff team for so many years probably ended up being some portion of that vision. So it's a nice change of pace to see a guy who says, all right, we're going to go all in, and then actually does it.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, as fun as we love to just make fun of Chuck Fletcher, and deservedly so at times, I mean, this Minnesota Wild team this year is one of the best Minnesota Wild teams we've seen in its history. So to be fair, I do think that helps a GM in a lot of ways because the team has a bit more of an identity and the GM knows a lot more what they're looking for. And I do think in a lot of the years, you know, with previous GMs, it's like the Wild didn't even know what they were. They're fighting for a playoff. It's like, are we good? Are we bad? I don't know. We're somewhere in the middle. We might go make a long playoff run. We might not even make the playoffs. Who knows? And this year, this team has a much better identity than what we've seen before. And I agree with you 100% that I think Bill Guerin is the kind of guy who knows exactly what he wants. But not only does he know what he wants, he knows exactly how to go get it. And then on top of that, he does go and get it. So it's like this like trifold kind of plan that he has where I mean, the GM job in sports is so tough. And it's easy for us as fans to critique it and say, like, why the heck did you give that up? Why the heck did you get this person? Why would you do that? Why would you pay them that much money? Or why, you know, whatever. But it's a tough job. And that's why I have so much respect for Bill Guerin, because time and time again, he's shown how good he is at that job. And I don't know if I've seen people say a bad thing about him since he's been here. I mean, Wild fans seem across the board to be just generally thrilled with Bill Guerin and the trust that they have in him. And maybe it is because it's refreshing and a different kind of scene than we've had before as far as that position goes. But man, like I said, just time and time again, he just goes out and executes on exactly what he wants to do. And he you know, he gives this Wild fan base so much hope on a daily basis that this team is as good as everybody thinks it is. And I think that's what makes it so exciting.
Well, and just the way that he handles some difficult things, like the Jack McBain situation, obviously a tough one. Like a talented kid who just didn't really see a path to getting to the NHL with this Wild team. And
Did you see what he said about him, though? What Guerin said about McBain? I mean, that's what I mean, though. Incredible. For those who don't know, I mean, Guerin was asked, like, you know, was it hard to part ways with him? And he literally, like, deadpan was like, no. Like, he didn't want to be here. I don't want him here. Like, simple as that. Like, that's how simple it is in Bill Guerin's mind. Like, he's not here to play games. He's not trying to be cute. Like, he's going to do what's best for this team, and to hell with anybody who doesn't feel the same way.
Yeah, like, I remember seeing those comments, and I'm like, whoa. Sorry. Yeah. Good luck. Good luck with that.
The door hit you on the way out.
Good luck with that 5,000 seat arena in Arizona. Going to be a lot of people that can get a chance to see you play 1C with the Check's Notes Arizona Coyotes. But not only that, the Victor Rask thing too. Like we're getting set for like all the reaction stuff yesterday after the 2:00 deadline had hit. Full knowing that there were just a ton of trades that still hadn't been processed, and all of a sudden Russo pops in and says, the Wild do have one more trade in the works, and everybody's like, what could it be? What could it be?
Yeah.
Bill Guerin got Ron Francis to pay half of Rask's salary the rest of the year to go play for Carolina's AHL affiliate. That's how good of a GM Bill Guerin is that he got Victor Rask to go away, and Ron Francis is helping him pay for it.
And that's, I think, I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that a GM like that, who is just so smooth with I mean, like, if you would have told me he would have been able to finesse that, I would have said, no, he wouldn't have. Nobody can finesse that. You couldn't even convince me to do that. And I have no idea how the inner workings of that kind of stuff goes. Like, I just, again, he makes it's just so smooth and seamless. Like, when I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, it just made so much sense. And it's just like, that's why he's so good at what he does. And I mean, think about trade deadline day. How many things are happening? How did Bill Guerin manage to address every single problem the Minnesota Wild have all in the span of like 12 hours? I don't know. I don't know how he did it, because I mean, to be able to wheel and deal with that many different teams and get this contract off your hands and bring this guy in and fill this gap and get freaking Bill Guerin was on the plane to go get Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't understand how he did all of this at the same time. Like, when I saw that, I was like, what the heck? So, I mean, all hail Billy G. Go off, King. Live your best life.
I could have a 2023 Tesla, and Bill Guerin would find a way to sell me like a 1995 Honda Civic.
And make you still pay for half the Tesla.
And make me feel good about it. Like, geez, I had this brand new car, but I talked to Bill, and like, this thing is great. And your friends are like, there are rust spots everywhere. It's just, it's the absolute best.
Again, if you like what you heard, you can follow all of Seth's great content by searching LockedOn Wild wherever you get your podcasts, or checking him out on social at LockedOn Wild.
Next, we have yours truly, the Sota Pod. We'll tease our other contributors later, but Hoppy and I talk everything Minnesota Wild beer and hockey. Here's a teaser from our most recent episode. Let's get into the Minnesota Wild game against the Minnesota Wild win against the Vegas Golden Knights. Hoppy, a strong showing from a Minnesota team that needed to make a statement after a busy day, busy weekend, I guess, by Billy Guerin.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really convincing first period. Like, that's exactly what you wanted to see. Kind of disappointing that they let Vegas very much come back into play in the second period. I mean, kudos to Cam Talbot, who's absolutely got Fleury breathing down his neck. We'll, again, get into the trades here shortly, but Cam Talbot's looked great the last couple of games. And if nothing else, if the addition of Fleury means that Cam Talbot's playing back in his quote-unquote all-star form, okay, I guess it was worth it, huh?
Yeah, I guess shipping the young guy who maybe is you're getting too comfortable playing behind you. Maybe that's the reason. It was funny because like a bunch of people were like, "Oh, the Wild, they didn't give up much at all. This and that." I'm like, they gave up their backup goaltender. Not to the team in which they acquired their other goaltender.
They gave up arguably their starting goaltender, depending on how you look at it.
The less streaky goalie this year.
Yeah, but so I mean, the rest of the game, I mean, people want to scream and yell about the refs. Like, I'm just so over it.
Every team. Okay,
I'm really close to just muting the word ref. But I mean, end of the day, like, came out with a 3-0 win. Can't be mad about that. But I would have liked to see them step on Vegas's throat, especially with Marc-Andre Fleury, new member to the team. He would have really enjoyed that. And I'm still so just frustrated and confused by the power play units. I'm so upset.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Look, I follow the Vancouver Canucks too, so I hear you, buddy. Like, it's the same. It's just, why isn't this working? And why aren't you doing just simple things that, again, never played the sport at any high level, but some things I just feel make sense, and they're just not doing it. But again,
right.
Who are we to, be critical in that sense? It is just frustrating at times. The one player who did fit in tonight, though, and you talk about some games you need some chemistry. Not Delorier, man. What an absolute machine out there, scoring a goal and also just being an absolute nuisance. to the Vegas Golden Knights. I like it. I like this grit. I mean, this is a playoff type player that the Wild have inserted into their lineup.
Yeah, and again, totally fine addition at first when that's the only move you've made. It's a little head scratching, right? But
well, it's like, is that the only piece you're bringing into the playoffs?
Right.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, but it's a fine piece regardless.
And we just got to hope that, I don't know if it's cocaine, I don't know if it's Russian gas, but whatever they hooked him up with for this game, they need to keep pumping him full of it.
Oh,
Life expectancy be damned.
Kaprizov's got the hookup. We're good.
Dude, Kaprizov needed the hookup. He's not looked great of late.
Kaprizov's like, he has the hookup, but he doesn't necessarily indulge, you know? Because he's too free-flowing out there. He doesn't look like a player who's just on the gas.
There, fair enough. If you didn't hate what you just listened to, you can find all of our content at the Sota Pod on social, that being Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or by searching the Sota Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Who's up next?
Minnesota Sports Chat. Those new to Ross or Minnesota Sports Chat, you get anything from a unique spin on Minnesota sports to the Rex of a frozen pizza connoisseur.
Manny Hill, as everybody knows, dear friend of mine, mentioned he is a current host, associate educator, many different hats like we all wear in broadcasting for Jazz 88, KBEM FM 88.5 here in the Twin Cities, jazz88.fm on the web. Jazz 88, KBEM, is housed at a Minneapolis North High School, owned and operated by Minneapolis Public Schools. And if you listen to Score North or any of the last few Minnesota Sports Chat podcasts, I have brought up the website scorenorth.com/hill. That is scorenorth.com/hill. And I'm going to do that again. It is a great way for you listening right now to help make a little bit of a difference out of just a really crummy, bad, and horrible situation as it relates to something that happened in the North community. Whether that be a $5 donation, $50 donation, $500 donation, whatever you feel led to give, if you can do so, we would certainly appreciate that to raise money for the Deshaun Hill Jr. North High School Memorial Fund. Manny can shed a little bit more light on Deshaun Hill Jr., the person, the backstory. Deshaun was basically just out and about and shot from behind 3 times and died a day later, 15 years old. Quarterback for Minneapolis North High School, basketball player for Minneapolis North, crazy good student, which Manny can back up. Manny actually spent some time with him in the classroom just a few days prior to this horrible incident. And Manny, I really just want to give you the floor to talk a little bit about Deshaun Hill Jr. and just what this entire thing means to you.
Well, it's special just because, you know, as somebody that lived on the north side of Minneapolis for a number of years, you know, it's a community with a lot of really, really special people, a lot of wonderful people. And I know that conversations from a lot of people who don't live on the north side, you know, the north side, it kind of has a reputation for gun violence and a lot of different variations of crime and things like that. But it has a lot of really, really, really wonderful, special people. And D Hill was one of those people, you know, just senselessly taken away from us, you know, and the community was hurting. It was really, really hurting. The school was hurting. A lot of his teammates, classmates were hurting. I was hurting. And certainly, obviously, his family and loved ones are still, I would imagine, grieving. He was a wonderful kid. He really was. Very soft-spoken, but very smart, very bright, really wonderful personality, and he's missed. You mentioned it. I did some recording with him, some voice tracking and whatnot, less than a week before this tragically happened to him. And it's funny, just sort of a side story that, you know, I brought him into the studio, and it was him and another student. They were going to do some recording. And one of the biggest things, Ross, that I always tell these kids is, I want you to be yourself when you go on the air. I want you to be yourself, because I don't want you to try and Don't try and sound like me. Don't try to sound like anybody else you hear on the radio.
Radio voice guy.
Right, exactly.
Be you.
Be yourself. And so I had kind of a script, sort of some footnotes typed down for them. And D Hill looks at the script and he's reading over some of the notes and he sees that his name's there and he goes, can I call myself D Hill? Can I use D Hill instead of Deshaun? I said, you do whatever you want to do. And he did it, and he did a wonderful job. And it's tough. You know, you could feel the emptiness after everything happened. You could just feel it. We're not related. We have the same last name, but there's no relation. But he was a special kid, and he was going to do a lot of really wonderful things. And so, to your point, you mentioned it, taking a tragic situation and turning it into something good. The Deshaun Hill North High School Memorial Fund is really special. We're going to try and establish academic and athletic scholarships for. Right now, we're kind of targeting the 2024 graduating class of North High School, which was D Hill's graduating class, and hopefully we can. This is something that we can continue for years to come in future classes as well.
Yeah, and I think, well, not think, Manny. I know this is very, very special to me that I can chip in any which way, and I acknowledge it's very small, and nothing that's happening here is about me. Everything is about Deshaun Hill Jr. But as you and I talked about, Manny, you came to Jazz 88. We've known each other forever, and I spent about a year there. I would have spent a ton more time there if I didn't get an incredible opportunity to come back to Hubbard, a company that I was with prior to working at Jazz 88 and prior to the pandemic. Where I am very lucky is that Dan Larkin, who runs KBEM Jazz 88, and Dan Seaman, who runs Hubbard, Minnesota. First off, they know each other. They have a working relationship. I know both of them. The fact that ScoreNorth.com and Jazz88.fm are both hubs to donate to this wonderful scholarship and using you and I to kind of bridge both of these groups together. This is really awesome, but it's only awesome if people can help us put money into this fund.
Right.
So again, I will kindly ask people that are listening, the easiest way is scorenorth.com/Hill, scorenorth.com/Hill, but I will also let people know when they're on that page. There's also a link to Jazz 88's website.
Correct.
Where you can actually hear some of that recent audio that Manny talked about with D Hill, with Deshaun. So please, just at the very least, just give this website a look and just listen to and look into the type of person that Deshaun Hill Jr. was and sadly didn't even get a chance to fully become. So scorenorth.com/Hill.
You can find this beauty on social at Brendel Ross. That's BRENDEL Ross. And his podcast by searching Minnesota Sports Chat on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Who's up?
Judd'z Budds. Mutant, Spitter, Sicko, Z. We don't care what you call him. To us, Spokes Z just means elite prospect coverage. Here's a preview of the brilliant ramblings you can hear on Judd'z Budds.
If you just go by raw numbers and you don't like that kind of hockey, then you're going to be miserable. Unless he decides to score every game like he did tonight. Apparently, that's just who he is now. He's the Wayne Gretzky. It's going to drive you nuts. And, if you can't find it within you to have fun watching, the team play because you didn't like the trade, or it's like, it's still bad value. I kind of think you're an asshole. I'll never tell you how to be a fan. I just want you to know I kind of think you're an asshole. And like I've said before, like our job is just to watch the games. Like it's cool that you're going to go and you say, that third round pick isn't worth it. I know, but I'm still going to have fun watching him run around, try to kill people, throw those forechecks that I felt. His first 3 shifts, he had 2 big hits on the forecheck that he scored, and then he did it again in the third shift. He's running around. He's yanking Carlson out of the crease by the scruff of his neck, starting scrums. He's running around. He's chirping everybody. Duhaime throws a hit at the end of the second period, I think it was, or maybe it was the first period, and Delorier just comes out of nowhere, like looking for someone to start something, and he's just chirping. He's awesome. He's really funny. So I think you should just enjoy it. Again, not going to tell you how to be a fan, just my pure opinion. Now, so for right now, it looks like that fourth line, they're going to roll with Duhaime, Jost, and Delorier. Now let's talk about the bad parts. Yes, like I said, the third round pick's not great. The big hit here, too, is now you're looking at like a kid like Connor Dewar, who's been fantastic since he came in, kind of out of nowhere. Again, we talked about at the beginning of the year and the offseason that it was going to be him and Duhaime challenging for a spot at a camp. Ultimately, Duhaime won, and he hasn't looked back whatsoever. He hit a rough patch recently, just like the whole team did. But Dewar's pretty much just been solid. He's doing exactly whatever it is that they ask him to do. He goes out and does it. He's good, relatively good on the PK before the PK fell apart. He plays a hard defensive game. He looks like a kid that's got a really long future in the NHL as kind of like a middle six forward, whether he's at center, whether he's in the wing. And now you bring in Nick Delorier pretty much as like a fighting guy, and he's going to be taking that spot. So we'll see what happens with Dewar. And Bukestad. And, Bukestad obviously had that brutal injury after getting slashed by Zuccarello in practice. And now it looks like he's kind of forced out of the lineup as well. So, that kind of sucks. I was wondering if maybe, they would include Bukestad on another trade. Obviously that didn't happen. So, on one hand, it's not great that a young kid like Connor Dewar, who there was no real reason for him to be kind of shoved out of the lineup. And even with the way Bukestad was playing, same with him. But, at the same time, you're going into the playoffs and your 13th and 14th forward are Connor Dewar and Nick Bukestad. That's a pretty good predicament to be in, right? So, and that's the other thing I'd say about the trade too. You want to talk about playoff hockey. You want to talk about getting into the grind. And when you really have to battle your way through every night, it's pretty helpful when you have, the Eriksson at Greenway Foligno line going out there and doing what they do. And then you have a fourth line with Delorier and Duhaime and Jost. And then when Dewar makes his way in there and Bukestad, you've got a team now that top to bottom can play that meat grinder type game. Can eat those minutes and let that top six just do their thing. And really no one's going to touch them either. Now you really run the risk of getting your head caved in if you want to go out and touch Kirill Kaprizov. I put that tweet out last night and I did not think it would take off, and people are going nuts. I think it was, this is just how my brain works. I think I said something along the lines of, imagine being Kirill Kaprizov and now having a license to tuck 40 and run around like a dickhead every game, slew footing goalies, two-handed guys in the back of the head, throwing pucks into the fucking other bench, chirping everybody, because that if someone touches you, you got Nick Delorier sitting on your bench, salivating, just waiting to end somebody's life. I would be running around like the biggest jackass in the world. I would be taking just ridiculous slashing penalties. I would be whacking guys at the side of the knee, just hopping back onto my bench. Been up, yeah, go ahead, D'Lo, go ahead, Des, go get him. You're up, bud. And just watch him go to work, because that's what Delorier loves. It's at the point where I'm pretty sure he's just like, yo, Kirill, go like start some shit. So people really enjoyed that tweet. Thank you. Keep the change, but that's just how my brain works. So, anyways. I was just pumping my own tires. But yeah, so in terms of raw value, is it a good trade? No. Do you love having Delorier on your team and in your room? Oh my God, yeah. And I mean, let's talk about tonight. Like we said, first three shifts, first shift he runs out there, rams a guy on the forecheck, puck comes out, gets a shot, does it again. Second shift come out, Duhaime and Jost go to work on the forecheck. They win the puck. Jost finds Duhaime down low. Duhaime with just a gorgeous pass out front to Delorier, and Delorier first time just tucks it home and rips the celly. Look, the X was going, and that's what he does, dude. Like, whether he's fighting or whether he's on the forecheck throwing big hits, Like I said before, he was dragging Carlson out of the Minnesota grease by his neck. The X was going nuts. The XL Energy Center was absolute pandemonium tonight for a fucking late March game. And a lot of that was, first of all, we're going to talk about the big trade. But a lot of that was just Delorier running around. He moves the needle. There's just endless amounts of energy. He's a human smelling salt on skates. And he's just a lot of fun. So, if he can fill a role defensively, and he can do what he does on that fourth line, you're just allowing the other guys on the team to go out there and do their thing and not have to worry about either locking those hard minutes or like Delorier said, Foligno doesn't have to run around fighting everybody for everybody. Now Delorier's out there. He wants to do it. He'll spend the 5 minutes in the box, he said. So I think it's a win in that regard. And again, you want to talk about, it took about 3 minutes for him to become a god in Minnesota. He hasn't even fought yet. His first fight at the X, there will be a statue already built outside. So all in all, value, no, it's bad. Yes. Yeah, it's definitely bad. But you got a deep pool. How many more picks do you really need? And I think it ends up being, for now, you're in win now mode. It's, again, Bill Guerin likes to build that room. I think it ends up as a net positive in the short term. And again, it's just pure raw excitement, energy. And that's what he brings to the table. So, if that was their only move, like let's say they didn't bring in Jost or they didn't do the Middleton trade or they didn't bring in Fleury, then I would probably be like, what the fuck's going on here? We just added a complete mutant to that fourth line and didn't do anything else to address all the other needs. But that's not what they did. So, again, if it was just that move, it would have been really bad. But for now, you eat that kind of shit sandwich in terms of, the raw value long term. But you enjoy the ride now, and he's a whole lot of fun. He's he's already a fan favorite, for fuck's sake. And I think that fourth line of Duhaime, Jost, and Delorier could be very funny. And I think it could be pretty effective in terms of, down the stretch with all these games and then leading into the playoffs. So that was that trade. I think I went off the rails for a while there. And that's just the way my brain works, and you all know that. So next up, we're going to talk about Jack McBain. But before we do that, before we talk about Jack McBain, I got to pay some bills. And I got to tell you about DraftKings. Love DraftKings. I won big this weekend in DraftKings, actually. Fun fact. Thank you. Keep the change. Thanks for coming. Anyways, let's talk about DraftKings. The NHL season has been packed with dirty dangles, hat tricks, and big wins as the action rolls on. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has your shot to win big too. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's right, a bump in the win column for your team means free bets for you. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you still have a shot to light the lamp. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. As I always say, do it right now. Hit pause and do it right now. Use promo code THPN, bet just $1 on any NHL team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 plus restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Tell you what, fellas, I nailed that. I mean, they don't make them like me anymore, folks. They really don't.
Dudes fucking rock. If you want more, you can find him every Tuesday. And sometimes we don't really know with him. He's kind of a wild card, maybe even Thursdays on the Sota Pod feed. So same podcast feed as before, but if you want to follow him specifically and for some reason you haven't already, you can check him out on Twitter at SpokedZ. Who do we got?
Wild takes on the MN Wild leg of 10K takes. Dev and Zooch talk hockey and nonsense, bringing you their wild takes every week. Here's some of their latest work.
Let's start with the final addition to the team was Jacob Middleton. So Jacob Middleton coming back.
We got future consideration.
Oh, sorry.
We got a bag of pucks and some new markers and some whiteboards. Okay,
that's correct. Okay, we're gonna pour one out. We're gonna pour one out. No. If we're gonna do this, we got to do it right, and we're gonna start with the most recent trade. We have to start with the Minnesota Wild. Well, excuse me. We have to start with the Iowa Wild, sending the Seattle Kraken Victor Rask for future considerations.
I don't have to listen to Wild fans bag on this guy because, I think it's a good thing because now Seattle fans, they didn't give up anything for him. So what do they have?
It turns out
Goodbye, my sweet prince.
Future considerations is actually a fan favorite in Seattle as well.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's so mean. Listen, honestly, all jokes aside, really hope Victor Rask does well, gets another contract. Seems like a great human being, and
he got our Russian prince started 2 years in a row. So
yeah, I'm not gonna say I've got nothing but love for him because that would be a lie, but I really do hope that he does well, and I definitely don't hate him. I used to, but I definitely don't anymore. And we call that growth. Now, moving on to the more exciting and the slightly more impactful trades. Jesus, I'm sorry. That was so mean. Jacob Middleton from the San Jose Sharks coming back in exchange for Kaapo Kähkönen and a 5th-round pick. He's a strong presence. He is a big physical guy. He's very solid in his own zone. He's not going to help out a ton on offense, but he's big, he's strong, and he is technically a rookie. He's only played 50-something games. I think his total games played is 54.
He's great on the penalty kill as well.
He's a pending RFA, and as long as he plays in 14 games, he'll remain an RFA. But if he plays in 13 or fewer games, he will become a pending UFA, which means, of course, more money and blah, blah, blah. But there's pretty much zero chance that happens because there are 21 games left in the season plus a playoff run. If you're Dean Evison, who's coming out?
If it was my gut, it tells me Merrill because Merrill plays a similar game, but I think Middleton's stronger almost. It's just so tough because Merrill's a great player as well. But you don't take Kulikov off, with how much he gets up in the play. I feel like you have to keep him in there. But I saw some people saying Goligoski, and if you actually think Goligoski needs to get pulled off the ice and needs to be in the press box, I got some words for you.
Nick Delorier, he absolutely laid a hammer on, I want to say it was Marchessault earlier in the game. He scores a goal on his first or second shift joining the Wild. And then late in the game, it's a post-play scrum. Wild Bill Carlson from Vegas falls down after trying to get a shot off. And
he's just sitting there.
He's just sitting there. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
He didn't even get care. He's just getting dragged out straight faced. He's like, what is happening?
Delorier grabs him by the jersey and the pads and pulls him along like a dog. If you didn't love Nick Delorier then
in his debut,
if you didn't love him, even if you had gotten to the point you're like, ooh, I don't know, we gave up a 3rd-round pick for him. That's kind of a steep price for this guy. He doesn't really score. And then he scores, and you're like, okay, well, it's kind of a steep price still. I don't know. Who knows what that 3rd-round pick will be.
I know. Dude, fuck.
And then if you get to that point and you see him drag Wild Bill Carlson out of the crease, literally drag him, and that doesn't do it for you, I don't know what to tell you. So the Wild are either trading pick 29, 30, 31, 32, or a 2nd-round pick that would be later than the 2nd-round pick they just got for Jack McBain. Cool. Sign me the hell up.
That's exactly why he did it, and that's exactly why Billy Guerin maneuvered, and that's exactly why he's a deadline hero. He was wheeling and dealing on that deadline, man.
Absolutely.
He had a deal for Cockett in place before he even got before he got Flower. He got Flower, and all of a sudden he's like, "All right, let's go slide this piece here." He was playing chess, and everyone else was playing checkers. It was
terrific. Billy G hops on one of the trade shows. I forget which one.
Wasn't it TSN?
I think it was the TSN one.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, was it hard for you to give up Jack McBain? He's such a promising young player." And he goes,
you trade Jack McBain, the rights to Jack McBain to Arizona, which had to be done when it was clear he wasn't going to sign there. But was it still difficult to part company with the Boston College Eagle?
No. Once he decided not to sign with us, it was easy.
Easy to say now, but I certainly wish him zero ill will, especially because he brought us the Flower, who is I'm very on the record. Probably my favorite not Wild player ever. Definitely my favorite.
He's definitely my favorite goalie.
One of my favorite players of all time, not just currently, but like all time ever. Like I love him. It was
surreal seeing him yesterday, even warming up. It was just so like. I didn't even know how to explain. I was sitting there, jaw on the floor when he was doing they're just shooting on him.
Yeah.
Whatever. He just looked happy to be here too. He was so happy. He's just like, yes.
Seriously, it's so exciting. I am absolutely just beyond thrilled that Marc-Andre Fleury is a member of the Minnesota Wild and is it's crazy. It
is nuts. It's hard to
almost don't believe it still.
You're all probably already following 10K Takes at 10K_takes if you're not. But go follow their hockey dedicated feed at Wild Takes 10K. And of course, search Wild Takes wherever you get your podcasts. Who do we got?
Our friends at Sound the Foghorn. Brett, Justin, and Zeke represent Sound the Foghorn from Wild to Whitecaps, killing the analytics and prospect game. Here's a sneak peek at their latest episode.
You look around the West and even the East to some degree, like, okay, we are what we are. We're big, we're heavy. Look at the grief line. That's our identity, and they are good. So maybe the way to win isn't to try to outskill these guys or like out Tampa, out Colorado. If we can't beat them that way, let's just beat them in a physical sense.
Yep.
Right? So let's be bigger, badder, tougher, and see who wins 7.
Yeah, it almost seems like they're taking it back to like the old Western Conference, kind of in the early 2010s when it seems like the Calgarys and the LA and the San Jose Sharks just had these big teams just, Dean Evans was pounded you down low and, established the forecheck where, you see a lot of these new age teams, the Colorados, the Vegases, the Floridas that like to play that speed north-south game, and it seems like the Wild have put an emphasis, acquiring all these versatile players who are good skaters, but also can throw their weight around and kind of slow you down and then just kill you on the forecheck and hem you in your zone for a couple minutes and eventually just bang in a dirty goal.
Yeah, I mean, the Ducks won the Cup in 2007, and they were a good club for about 5-6 years after that, and that was really their recipe. They led the league in majors almost every year. Now you look at Middleton, Delorier, Foligno. The top 3 guys in terms of majors this year. I think Delorier's 10, Middleton's 9, and Foligno's 8, right? So 1, 2, 3, boom. All of a sudden, this club is starting to look like those clubs, like the LA Kings, the Anaheim Ducks, as you mentioned, of 2010. I think it was 2012. The Kings won the Cup with a big, heavy team like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right, spot on. I do think the game is cyclical in that sense, copycat league, where some people are trying to copy how do you beat Tampa at being Tampa. The smart clubs and the one that might win it next is thinking different. Okay, how do we make Tampa not good anymore? Beat them up, right?
Exactly.
Or I'll battle them because it's still part of the game.
Another thing we talked about last show, something I like about these moves too, is Foligno doesn't feel like he has to be the guy now. Like he can be the guy to stand up for his teammates, but you got Delorier and Middleton. That Delorier is a top 5 in hits, and he's willing to fight. Obviously, got 10 fights this year, or whatnot. So it keeps that grief line on the ice together, where they're so effective defensively. I think they went like the first 21 games together without allowing a goal. So you keep those guys on the ice more together. I just feel it helps.
I think you're right, and I think like, you remember when Greenway's contract came out, a lot of people were like, whoa, that's a lot of money for Greenway. You know, like, he doesn't have the numbers. But then you look at what the line does when they're together, and you can lock up your identity for 3 years. Maybe you got to overpay a little bit, or maybe they did. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but it's similar to Delorier. Like, hey, man, if we can keep Marcus on the ice, and it's not just about Marcus, it's about that line. If I can keep that line rolling all the time, that's to my advantage. So to relieve Marcus of the pressure of having to fight and sit 5 minutes in the box, maybe 15 if he gets 2-5 of 10, whatever, right? Because that's part of the role sometimes there too. Now I can roll these guys, and Marcus can just focus on playing, because when they play hockey, they're actually pretty darn good, you know.
You don't score 20 goals by accident, so or whatever. I think it's
no, but it is. But it is amazing. You guys are stat guys. It is amazing. Marcus Foligno's shooting percentage over the last 2 years has hovered around 25%.
Yep.
He's led the league. Like, the law of averages says, like, there's no way this is sustainable. I would have bet my house on it last year. That Marcus couldn't duplicate a 25% shooting percentage. And here we are, 3/4 of the way through, and he's done it.
Yeah, I think part of it too, just it's a testament to that line, because they create so much havoc, and you know how many of those goals have been on, you know, rebounds or tip-ins where they're just getting guys at the front of the net and just good positioning, and you know, wearing these guys down and finding those soft spots and eventually cashing in. But yeah, it's been great to see kind of the evolution of Marcus Foligno, you know, pure defensive forward, into Marcus Foligno, two-way threatening power forward.
Well, he's getting to the point where it's like, well, gosh darn it, Marcus, shoot the puck more.
Yeah.
If it's going to go in all the time, you got such a lethal shot. Why are you only shooting it like 40 times a year, man? Like, fire that thing. You know,
he makes some dangles too this year. I've like, did Marcus Foligno just do that? Like, you like jump around the guy and dangle him. I'm just like, wow. Power forward that can dangle.
Right. So that's where, and Brett, you were talking about, it's pretty impressive that he's come from a role guy, a Delorier, if you will, right? Role guy, fighter, to maybe he's going to get a sniff on the penalty kill, and he got that chance here with the Wild under Boudreau, I think it was. Did pretty well with that, then elevated the lineup a little bit, third line role, to now he's getting a sniff on the power play and just continues to produce, to where he went from a role guy to in the same conversation as Tom Wilson, like super tough power forward, you know, and kudos to him for sticking with it and doing that.
If you like what you heard, feel free to head on over to Sound the Foghorn. Any podcast platform that you have, we should be there. Look for the Minnesota Wild colors and the iconic Foghorn logo. If we're not on your favorite podcast platform, feel free to let us know on Twitter or Instagram at Sound the Foghorn, all one word. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
If you don't already, follow them on social at Sound the Foghorn and plug that into your favorite podcast platform as well. Who do we got next?
MNCAA, hosted by Nick Maxon. You get your weekly dose of Minnesota's college puck. Here's a look at what you can expect for all 6 Division I programs.
We're going to switch over to Drew, because Drew's Gophers are sitting in a really, really good spot right now. Drew, how's it feel to be looking down at North Dakota right now in the standings? That must feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, got to be honest, the Gophers, like we talked about it in the past too, like the Gophers got hot at the right time, man. Like it seems like every other Minnesota team is maybe not doing the same thing. But you know what? Gopher fans have got to feel pretty good looking down at a lot of the same competition that for the better part of this last decade they've not really been as good on. I guess it's not 2020 anymore; it's 2022 right now. But in the last decade, I guess the Gophers were often looking up at a lot of the in-state competition in North Dakota. So I mean, now it's nice to see it at the top, see the Gophers kind of back where fans expect them to be. So it should be a fun weekend too. We get the match, we get the matchup everyone's been hyping up all season, the Michigan-Minnesota conference final. So we'll see how it goes.
We haven't confirmed if they're arriving in Minneapolis just yet, but we'll work on that in our insiders shortly. But Drew, we still don't look up to the team that's just south of the Judd'z Budds. Let's welcome in Alex Micheletti for Minnesota State. Alex, there seems to be no stopping you guys, as again we get a freeze frame of your smile there. You know, I know that rural broadband internet is still pretty tough to get, but how do you assess the Mavs? They're going into the CCHA championship game here against the Beavs.
Yeah, we talked last week. I predicted a Mankato Bemidji final. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. They're a tough team to play off. Especially for they really shut things down and getting into a trap. You can ask Wisconsin how that went last year in the conference or in the NCAA tournament. They just completely shut them down after getting a lead, and it's tough. So it's it's going to be imperative for them to get the first one, and if they can get their special teams going out of the map, it's really overwhelm teams and get that top line and sure. And those they are talking. They announced the CC teams. We had Dryden McKay get goaltender of the year, Jake Livingstone get defenseman of the year, and Nathan Smith getting forward of the year. So pretty good.
We'll fix R2D2's audio here in just a little bit. Ryan Stieg, I got to imagine that, again, you're facing this same squad. He's right. I mean, the Beavers do frustrate a lot of teams. In fact, they frustrate them much to beat themselves. But you've had some wild takes this year with St. Thomas. A couple of them actually probably should have gone your way. But is this really that far out of the equation that the Beavers can pull off an upset at what would be the worst time for Mankato to have an upset?
I really don't think it's that far out there to say it's not. I mean, I could easily see Bemidji winning on Saturday night because it's one game is different than a best of 3 game series because you get a jump on somebody, you can put them away early. And I think St. Thomas proved in their first game against Mankato that you can't really count anybody out at this point when you're playing in the postseason, the fact that they came so close. So I really, I think Bemidji is more than capable of getting a win Saturday night. I don't know if I'm really going to go that far quite yet because I haven't really thought of my prediction right yet. But I think they're more than capable of doing it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Finally, Sean Connery is also here. We're going to move on beyond Duluth. No, I'm just kidding. Max Veach, feeling pretty good right now, I'd imagine. About a week ago, we weren't feeling so good. Gave up home ice in the last game of the regular season, and then essentially sudden life from the grips of sudden death. How does it feel to be a Bulldog fan after the last events have transpired down in St. Cloud?
Well, it's middle of March. This is our time to shine. It always has been, always will be. I just can't wait for it to keep going here. They always seem to find a way to turn it on, and a 5-2 win where we got to see an actual hat trick out of a UMD player for the first time in God knows how long. It was a sight to see. It was glorious. Everything that I wanted and hoped for it to be. And then on Saturday, got to watch him battle back from being down and just kind of, choke the life out of all of the St. Cloud State Huskies that were out there and all the fans watching at home.
Just like Judd'z Budds, you can find all MNCAA episodes on the Sota Pod feed with episodes dropping every Friday. Go follow the dedicated college hockey feed on Twitter at MN_NCAA. MNCAA was taken by some douchebag with 0 followers that won't reply to Isha with our very lucrative USD cash offer. Now, Isha, who's the last show that we want to promote here this week?
Brave the Wild. Joey has been in the Minnesota Wild podcast game since 2008. Here's a clip from the chiseled veteran.
It's not been a good week for the Iowa Wild whatsoever. Just getting their butts kicked and not really scoring. It's been disappointing to say the least. Beckman had been picking up the pace a tiny bit, but he still had basically a half a point a game in the AHL. So I'm a little disappointed in Beckman. He had a good start to the season and not so much. Same with Sweeney. Joe Hickett's, same thing. I mean, luckily, Kalen Edison's been picking it up, and I think he's right on the doorstep of being a regular in the National Hockey League. And I sure freaking hope so. Victor Rask has basically been their best player down there because obviously he's been an NHL player for years. Suddenly he's in the AHL because it is what it is. He's not a good fit for the Minnesota Wild right now, and he's in the final year of his contract, which I'm sure both sides are happy about at this stage. So that kind of is what that is. If we can talk about Jack McBain, if I can stomach it, I'm kind of ticked off about the whole thing at this point. Do you blame me? Yep, I'm ticked off, all right. Because now, Jack McBain, as he's emerged so nicely, had an amazing season. It sounds like he has his heart set on signing somewhere else. I'm guessing it's out east. Boston Bruins, possibly. Maybe Buffalo, which would be funny. Or the New York Rangers. I'm guessing it's the Rangers or the Bruins, but who knows? It could be anybody. But I'm thinking it's a team that has playoff possibilities going forward. And a well-known franchise. 19 goals, 14 assists, well, with Boston College. And, of course, we're waiting now as we head into we're in the conference tournaments and then NCAA tournament. But Jack McBain, talk is that he will be traded because he doesn't want to play for Minnesota for some reason. And when the Wild acquired Tyson Jost, that was basically it right there. Not because Tyson Jost is is like a million times better than Jack McBain or whatever it is, but that's the roster spot right there. It was going to be Nico Sturm's spot that Jack McBain was going to be in. He was going to be with Minnesota. And he's just said, no, I don't want to sign with Minnesota. There's still a small possibility, still a glimmer of hope because he has not signed anywhere else yet, and he's not been traded. So there's still a chance. At the moment, he's still technically our property, and he's had an amazing last week. I refused to vote for him, though, on MNW prospects. I just didn't want to because I'm pissed off at him right now. That's my old competitive side right there. You don't want to vote for somebody who doesn't want to be here, so hell with them at the end of the day. The talk is that Ben Myers is the backup plan. Minnesota Gophers, he's a junior now, basically, but yeah, he's already 23 years of age. He's technically a junior or third season with the Gophers anyway. He's having a wonderful season with a team that very well could win the national championship. So if he did, we'd have to wait until April for him to sign with Minnesota, go from Minnesota to Minnesota. Delano, Minnesota native, now that I've said that state about 15 times. Also, certainly not nearly as big as Jack McBain, who's 6'4", 200. Ben Myers, 5'11", 204, so he's got a big body at the very least. He plays a physical game, and he's the kind of guy with enough talent he could probably play in the middle six, we'll say, in the NHL. Could end up being a very nice player. And the hope is that Ben Myers is the guy, and he would be willing to come to Minnesota, where he would be possibly a nice replacement for Jack McBain, long-term with the Minnesota Wild. And maybe have to skate a little bit in the AHL first, but I'm thinking they're saying he would be in the NHL basically. So he's been a nice prospect. Certainly, he was never drafted, but he's a nice college free agent prospect basically going forward. It's just a bummer at the end of the day how things have turned out with Jack McBain. Hell of a player. Hell of a player. It's just what pisses me off is he'd been kind of mediocre the first 3 seasons in Boston College. And then here comes his senior year, and he's unbelievable. And then he's like, screw you, I'm not playing for you guys. So it's like, thanks, man, after all that. So whatever. Drives me absolutely nuts that it turned out that way. But again, like I said, we're heading into those college tournaments. Really, really looking forward to how that turns out. Sam Henches and the St. Cloud State Huskies. He had 20 points in 19 games, 11 of them goals. Obviously a wonderful senior season. He would have had career highs that he missed a big portion of the first half of the season. That's unfortunate. Sam Henches. He's a guy that, let's get him to Iowa at the very least at the end of the St. Cloud State season. Hopefully it's before the Gophers. Let's just leave it at that. Hopefully we're bringing in Sam Henches to Iowa before Ben Myers joins Minnesota, quite possibly. Henches, 22 years of age, of course.
Get your questions in every week by following @BraveTheWild and listen by searching Brave the Wild Minnesota Wild podcast.
All right. Thanks to everybody tuning in on Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, wherever you get your podcasts from, the best thing you can do for us or any of the content that you heard in this podcast episode, you can go on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, give us and give them 5 stars and a kind review. It goes such a long way. You're already supporting us by listening to this episode, so you might as well go and review us as well. If you're jonesing for more hockey content, go listen through our website, thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. And on your app, please download the episode before you listen, as it just helps all of our business. You can follow myself at VI Sports Talk. You can follow Hoppy at State of Hoppy. And of course, you can find the Sota Pod on all platforms at the Sota Pod. Signing off, I'm Misha Dromi alongside the State of Hoppy. This has been the Sota Pod, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. We good, buddy?
We good.
Don't fear, just drink some beer and stay wild.